Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about why I do not support the idea of doing partial reps to overload part of a movement pattern. And coming from a powerlifter, I know that's going to be a controversial statement because equipped powerlifting has promoted half reps for years and years and years. And for me, outside of using them just as max effort variations purely for that purpose, which again, we could almost do random movements like this, so there's nothing special about doing these. But I just simply don't believe in the idea of overloading the top of a movement. It's ludicrous. It's not necessary. It's not based upon physiology. It's not based upon the way the human body responds. And it's certainly not necessary for people to be world-class level lifters, because there are plenty of world champions who don't do any partial work. None. Okay, so that should tell you something right there. Meaning it's optional. And I don't think it has any actual benefits. Now, a lot of people like to make these statements, that I'm overloading my triceps, because they're doing a four-board press, or because they put on a slingshot, okay, or they're doing a pen press that's only a half rep. Well, you're not overloading the muscle mechanically. We could apply the same thing to rack pulls. We could apply the same thing to pen squats, where people will say that, and they're like, "Well, I'm overloading the top," and it's like, "Well, how? What makes you think you're overloading it?" I mean, the first giveaway should be, if you're able to use more than your 1 rep max, it should be the first giveaway that you're not actually overloading the muscles. All right, and we want to be clear there. Most of these movements, the point of greatest mechanical tension on the muscle is when it's in the lengthened position. So in other words, if you can do 150 pounds more on the lockout than you can off your chest, for example, on the bench, you're not overloading the triceps at the top. The point of greatest mechanical tension on the tricep is at the bottom. So if you're reducing the weight, or you're adding more weight to the bar, but you're only doing the top part of the movement, where we're in the shortened position of the muscle, not the lengthened, you're not putting more tension on the muscle. Even though there's more weight, you haven't increased the load on the muscle at all. If anything, relative to your strength curve, you may be loading it less. Okay, because less muscle fibers can get recruited through a half range of motion than a full. All right? So biomechanically, it doesn't make sense. Like, it's illogical. Not how the body works. Most of your overload happens at the bottom. And people say, well, it can still be for hypertrophy because we're putting more tension, but you're not. You're not putting more tension. Just because there's more weight on the bar when you look at the moment arms doesn't mean there's more tension. Again, there could be less. All right, it could be less because your point of greatest mechanical tension is probably wherever the movement started. And if you look at those moment arms, your triceps may be getting less work. Furthermore, when we look at hypertrophy studies, we know that half reps, even when intensities are kept constant, meaning let's say you're doing a 10 rep max. All right, you're doing a 10 rep max, so it's going to be more weight on the half rep. They usually produce, not always, but the majority of the time, they produce less muscle growth in the lab. Again, that matches what we know about biomechanics. We would expect to see that. So it's not causing muscle growth, and also people make that argument, well, it's causing more muscle growth through the tension. Well, the lab shows that it doesn't usually. It's usually less muscle growth. Number two, mechanically, you aren't putting more tension on the muscles. So it doesn't work for that. So what are we left with? Well, it helps you get used to handling the weight. And that's kind of the next point I would bring up. When has that ever been required? If that was beneficial, then every time you needed to hit a PR, you would need to do a partial first to get used to the weight. But here's the reality. Every one of us who've been training a while have walked into the gym and hit 30, 40, 50 pound PRs over anything we've hit in training when we go for a max or we go to an event. All right, it happens to every one of us sooner or later. Remember when I did the charity event and I pulled 625 at that breast cancer charity? Did I touch anything near 600 pounds in the 6 months before that? No. The heaviest weight I lifted was 570, which is a good training max. I walked into that event and pulled 625. I hadn't handled 625 in a very, very long time. Same thing, the same week I'm making this video, which is going to be months ago by the time it's up. I walked in after doing only deficit work. Speed pulls, things like that. The heaviest weight I had touched was 565, including at the meet before. Walked in and did a 605 deadlift and easily held the lockout. It was fast. People were like, wow, it looked like an opener. And I held the lockout in my hands for 2 seconds and set it down under control. 40 pounds over anything I had touched for, 6 months? Yeah, 6 months. 7 months. But did it easily? It's not even a true max. Did I have to get used to handling that weight? No. And when you're ready to PR, what happens? Let's say you've built your squat strength, you've built your bench strength, whatever. When you unrack that weight, does it feel heavy? If you're tight and you're about to set a true PR and you're strong that day, the weight in your hands or on top of your back, even though it's a weight you haven't handled, it usually doesn't even feel heavy. That's the first sign that you know that you're about to hit a big PR when you go for that PR lift and it feels like air on your back when you unrack it. Even if it's 20 or 30 pounds more than anything you've touched in the last year or ever in your life. So what makes people think that we need to get used to the weight? If you're strong enough to lift it, you're strong enough to lift it. It's that simple. Okay, there's nothing magical about holding a weight in your hands or on your back that you haven't handled. There's no reason to think that it's necessary or even beneficial. Either you were strong enough to lift a weight because you've built the muscle mass, you've built the technique, you've built the intramuscular coordination. Either you're strong enough to lift it or you are not. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.